Indeed, larger than both Coco and Sabalenka. It's insane, dude. She is experiencing the same impact as Fonseca. A true rock star. Steve Johnson, a 12-year ATP veteran who has witnessed every kind of star the sport can generate, said those things. He was not referring to a Grand Slam victor. He was referring to a 20-year-old Filipino who was rated 140th in the world 18 months prior. Alex Eala is her name. Additionally, the events that transpired in the weeks preceding Indian Wells 2026 compel the whole sport to re-evaluate who really makes a difference. Is it still necessary to close the golf deficit before the coronation is complete, or can AILA convert that belief into a deep Indian Wells run? Go back to March 2025 and share your guess in the comments. Eala is a wild card going into Miami. Her ranking was so low that most casual fans had never heard of her, and she had neither seeding nor expectations. Madison Keys was defeated by her. The most powerful player in women's tennis, Iga Swiatek, was then defeated by her. She made history by being the first Filipino to advance to the WTA 1000 semifinals. She rose to the 50th spot in the world rankings before the end of the year. In Guadalajara, she won her first WTA 125 championship. She signed on as a Nike Global Ambassador, and the walls of their Oregon headquarters were lined with images of her face. Portraits honoring her people, her flag, and her heritage. Then came Dubai in February 2026. In the first round, she defeated Jasmine Paolini, ranked 8th in straight sets, 6-1. The match ended in a tie-break, and the top 8 opponent was reduced to chasing shadows. On February 23, Indian Wells announced its draw after the rankings upgraded Alex Eala to world number 31, the highest position ever attained by a Filipino woman in the 47-year history of the WTA. Eala seeded 31. Bye for the first round. A predicted rout that might put her up against Coco Gauff as early as the third round. Her name was now required to be circled by the experts who had previously scrolled past it. The response came right away. Videos analyzing her ascent went viral on YouTube. Podcasts rushed to explain how a player they had hardly discussed a year earlier was now surpassing the global leader in stadium attendance. The statement that ignited the tennis media was made by former top 20 player Steve Johnson on the Nothing Major podcast. What the crowds had previously demonstrated was verified by him. Even seasoned champions were unable to match Eala's ability to fill seats. This was no longer about potential. This concerned a competitive and commercial force that the establishment had not anticipated. She was practicing with Sabalenka at Indian Wells, two players on opposite extremities of the credibility timeline, as the same analysts who had written off her Miami performance as an anomaly watched. In Miami in 2025, the evidence began to mount. Two players in the top 10 were eliminated in the same week by a wild card ranked 140th. The throngs told a different story than that alone would have. It was unprecedented, according to spectators in the stands. Sections that had been half vacant for previous matches were filled with Filipino flags. Employees at the tournament verified the atmosphere was more akin to a concert than a tennis match. See the 140th ranked Monday of that Miami week. A player in the top 100 who finished in the semifinals by Sunday. The trajectory was a pattern that was developing in real time. It was not an accident. The remainder of 2025 saw an acceleration of that trend. Guadalajara won her first championship. Every event brought more flags, more prayers, and more proof that something extraordinary was developing as the ranking rose past 6th, 70th, 60th, and 50th. Dubai 2026 attested to it. Eala stood on the court after defeating Paolini and posed a single question to the audience. How many of you have offered up prayers for me? For 115 million Filipinos watching worldwide, the ensuing roar was a response. She is currently the world's biggest attraction in women's tennis. Yes, Steve Johnson quantified what the crowds had previously shown when he spoke on the Nothing Major podcast a few days later. She is the biggest draw in women's tennis, according to him. Not a player to watch, not a future star. Present tense is the most alluring. Absolute rock star, in his exact words. However, she is similar. A true rock star. The establishment is forced to listen when a 12-year tour veteran who has shared locker rooms with the biggest personalities in the sport makes that allegation without being asked. There is a recurring pattern in Miami, Dubai, and now Indian Wells. The findings come after the masses arrive in numbers that startle the organizers. The specialists then frantically try to explain what the fans had noticed months before. Here, Johnson's qualifications are important. Over the course of a career spanning more than 10 years at the top level, this player won numerous ATP titles. He has watched stars rise and fall. He has observed the distinction between content and hype. He made an unhedged estimate. He did not mention that Eala might end up being the main attraction. She already was, he said. Larger than Sabalenka and larger than golf, it attracts the kind of standing-room-only audiences that the sport saves for its most exceptional players. The same week that Eala got her Indian Wells seeding, that endorsement arrived. His remarks changed from commentary to prophecy due of the timing. IALA's presence at Nike's worldwide headquarters is a sign of something bigger than the career path of a single player. The commercial center of gravity of the sport is changing. Grand Slam victories were a prerequisite for tennis celebrity for many years, followed by fan bases. That formula is being reversed by IALA. The large trophies were preceded by the fan army. The ranking peaks came after the commercial power. The same data is being monitored by tournament directors from Roland Garros to Miami to Indian Wells. Regardless of her seeding, a player who packs stadiums embodies a certain kind of value that goes beyond conventional measurements. The first test of this new reality at the top level of the sport will take place at Indian Wells. If the outcomes keep getting better, if the crowds are as intense as those in Dubai, the institution will formally recognize what Filipino fans have known since Miami during the 2026 season. Indian Wells this week, Miami's return in 3 weeks, and the clay court swing through Madrid and Rome are the upcoming chapters. Every incident becomes a new piece of information in a narrative that doesn't seem to be slowing down. The remaining distance was revealed in the Dubai quarterfinal matchup with Goff, 6-0, 6-2, a score that was unambiguous. In her press conference following the game, Eala explicitly addressed it. She acknowledged that there was a noticeable gap and offered no justifications. "But I'm headed in the right direction," she continued. She was seated for the first time at a WTA 1000 event in Indian Wells 14 days later. The route she mentioned had already started up again. The wild card run in Miami, the standing room fans in Dubai, Johnson's clear statement, and the Nike picture honoring her ancestry. The seeding that changed the history of tennis in the Philippines. And how many of you have prayed for me throughout it all? In ways the sport has rarely seen, Alex Eala has turned fan loyalty into competitive momentum. The professionals who used to ignore her are now having to explain how they failed to notice the obvious. It was not missed by 115 million Filipinos. They were able to identify greatness before the rankings did. Before the seedings demanded respect, they filled stadiums. They thought it was safe to believe. Is it still necessary to close the golf gap before the coronation is finalized, or can ELA turn that belief into a deep Indian Wells run? Leave a comment with your prediction. You belong to the group that saw this news first if you have been following it since Miami. Fans who were early believers should subscribe now since this chapter is just getting started and they should be able to see every second of what happens next. What makes the rise of Alex Eala so remarkable is that the tennis world didn't create the hype around her, the fans did. Long before analysts started debating her ceiling, the crowds were already arriving. Filipino flags started appearing in sections that had never been associated with a single player before, turning neutral venues into something that felt like home courts. From Miami Open to BNP Paribas Open, the pattern kept repeating itself. The fans showed up first, the results followed, and only then did the tennis establishment begin to catch up. In an era where most athletes build their popularity through trophies, Eala's story is unfolding in reverse. Global attention first, championships potentially next. And that is exactly why the upcoming stretch of the season carries so much intrigue. If the momentum continues through Indian Wells, the return to Miami, and the clay swing toward French Open, the sport could be witnessing the arrival of its next truly global superstar. The crowds are already there. The belief from millions of Filipino fans around the world is already there. The only missing piece is the breakthrough run that converts energy into undeniable dominance. If that moment comes, and many insiders believe it will, the tennis world may look back at this period not just as the rise of a promising player, but as the moment a new center of gravity in women's tennis began to form. What makes this moment different is the timing. Alex Eala is still climbing the rankings, still refining her game against the very best players in the world, yet the scale of attention around her already resembles that of a Grand Slam champion. That kind of momentum can change the entire atmosphere of a tournament. When she steps onto the court at events like the BNP Paribas Open, the crowd isn't just watching a match, they're participating in a movement. The chants, the flags, the anticipation before every point create an energy that even veteran players notice. In a sport built on tradition and hierarchy, a young star drawing this level of passion before reaching the top tier is something tennis hasn't seen in a long time. But the real story may be what happens next. If Eala converts that energy into deeper runs at major tournaments, especially the Grand Slams like the French Open or the US Open, her influence could expand far beyond rankings and prize money. Entire new markets would engage with the sport, television audiences across Southeast Asia would surge, and the WTA could find itself with a new global face of the game. For now, the results are still being written match by match, but one thing is already clear. The rise of Alex Eala is no longer a quiet story inside tennis circles. It's becoming one of the most compelling narratives in the entire sport.